cards with you right now before we start our little lesson, just so you can know exactly what I'm talking about in some of these PowerPoint slides. We've got capital, money or property that companies or individuals use to increase their wealth. Agribusiness, the business of producing, processing, and distributing farm products on a larger scale. And the baby boom. The baby boom was a sudden increase in births in the United States following World War II. All right, Unit 12, Modern Texas. Texas industries continued to grow after World War II. During this period, Texans were responsible for many advances in technology that improved life in the state. However, not all state residents enjoyed the prosperity of the post-war years. Civil rights leaders worked to make changes so that all Texans shared the benefits of a modern society. We have a little timeline down here starting with 1946. Texas begins paving 7,500 miles of highways. In 1947, the explosion of chemicals on a ship at Texas City kills nearly 600 peoples. Texas City is very close to Galveston. I know a lot of us have visited there. 1954, the Dallas engineer Gordon Teal invents the silicon transistor. 1956, Congress authorizes building the interstate highway system with 3,200 miles in Texas. 1958, Dallas engineer Jack Kilby invests the integrated circuit. On 1963, NASA's Manned Spacecraft Center opens in Houston. How many of you visited NASA in Houston? I've been there several times. In 1969, NASA puts the first person on the moon. The technology in an expanding economy. Why does it matter now? Most businesses in Texas today were influenced by changes that occurred after World War II. The years following World War II were a time of great change for Texas businesses, including recently developed wartime industries, banking, agriculture, and technology. After World War II, Texas military bases continued to boost the economy and train pilots. Texas continued to produce aircraft as well. Leland Snow and the town of Olney began to produce crop duster planes. Here's a crop duster plane right here. Bell helicopters are made in Fort Worth. Helicopters began to be used for emergency transportation and to reach offshore rigs. Here's the view of Dallas, Texas. How many of you have been to Dallas, Texas? This is coming in on Interstate 35, I believe. I'm not too sure about that. But this is the view that I see as we're coming into Dallas. My grandparents live in Dallas, so we make that trip quite a bit. The production and price of oil and gas went up significantly, causing a huge growth in that industry. Many people took out loans to start an oil and gas company. The increased business for banks too. Bankers in Houston and Dallas began expanding, building large reserves of capital, and hiring specialists in petroleum finance. The cities of Houston and Dallas grew considerably during this time. Farming in Texas required farmers to invest in irrigation, machinery, and pesticides long before seeing any profits. Many small farmers could simply not afford to stay in business. This led to the development of large farming businesses known as agribusiness. There goes that vocab word. The companies increased irrigation, especially in West and South Texas, where the land had always been too dry for farming. Soon, some cotton production moved west. The Rio Grande Valley in South Texas was now able to produce citrus fruits and a wide variety of vegetables year-round. As many families gave up farming and even growing their own foods to work in factories, the demand for store-bought food increased. Major food processing companies moved their canneries to Texas. Here's a cannery. They built their processing plants close to fields in the Rio Grande Valley and other parts of the state. With these companies came jobs, and even more Texans left farming to work in the industry. Texas ranching also enjoyed major growth during this period. By the 1970s, a sale of cattle and other farm animals produced $3.5 billion in revenue, and Texans led all other states in the livestock production. As early as 1916, there were nearly 200,000 vehicles registered in Texas. But as the automobile's popularity grew, so did problems with the state's road system. By the end of World War II, Texas highways were crowded and in desperate need of repair. These repairs would not only benefit travelers, but also allow the safe and speedy shipment of products to market within and outside the state. In 1945, the Texas Highway Commission approved the construction of 7,500 miles of paved roads. In 1949, the legislature dedicated $15 million per year to building and maintaining rural farm-to-market roads, an FM road. In 1956, Congress passed the Federal Aid Highway Act, which created our interstate highway system. With new interstate highways such as I-10, I-35, and I-45, trucks could carry goods from Texas to the Mexico border to New York or Canada. Soon, trucks replaced railroads as the primary means of carrying goods to market. With improved highways came increased auto sales. In 1950, Texan Lawrence Bell established the Bell helicopters and built the world's first helicopter factory. Other Texas corporations began developing high-tech weapons and aircraft for the military. General Dynamics, Boeing, and Texas Instruments all played major roles in the air defense industry during the 1950s. In the 1960s, the popularity of high-speed jet travel soared. The development of the long-range jumbo jets made it possible to fly from Texas to Europe in a fraction of the time it took to travel by sea. Soon, Texas was in need of new urban airports. Houston Intercontinental was built in 1969, and Dallas-Fort Worth Regional Airport was built in 1974. I have personally taken flights out of both of those airports. Texas companies such as Texas Instruments and Collins Radio made great strides in electronic technology over the years. Do y'all remember when a computer looked like this? I don't know that any of you would have been alive during this model of the computer, but maybe you've seen pictures or seen some old ones in storage. Gordon Teal, a Dallas engineer, invented the silicon transistor in 1954. Just 4 years later, Dallas engineer Jack Kilby developed the integrated circuit. Together, these new technologies led to the creation of the computer chip. The component is used in millions of electronics and computerized devices around the world. In 1961, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, named Houston the home of its new manned spacecraft center. 1 year later, in a speech to 35,000 Houstonians at Rice University, President John F. Kennedy explained his goal to win the worldwide race to put a person on the moon. Opened in 1963, the facility at Clear Lake near Houston became Mission Control Center for NASA's manned space flight program. During the 1960s, with the support of Texas-born President Lyndon B. Johnson, who is the successor to Kennedy after he was assassinated, he was the vice president who became president, the space program and its related industries grew and expanded. By 1966, the center had more than 5,000 employees on 1,620 acres. In 1969, scientists and engineers at Mission Control in Houston successfully guided the Apollo 11 astronauts to a safe landing on the moon. As the world listened and watched on radio and television, astronauts in various Apollo missions communicated back to Houston, making it known as a Center for Science and Technology. In August 1973, the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston was officially renamed the Lyndon B. Johnson Space Center. Today it remains an important technological research and development center. Urban growth and civil rights. Why does this matter now? Thanks to the efforts of Texas civil rights leaders, today's Texans enjoy far more justice and equality than ever. After World War II, millions of Texans moved to cities. Those who could afford it moved to areas just outside of the cities. Many minority citizens faced growing discrimination in jobs, housing, education, and social services. As Texas cities were growing, so were the families living in them. Veterans who had put off marrying until after the war now wanted to raise families. This, along with the nation's healthy economy, created a baby boom in the United States. The baby boom in Texas and the rest of the United States contributed to the development of suburbs. Growing families left small houses in the city and moved to a larger house outside of town. Suburban families wanted schools and shopping centers closer to home. Soon, many schools, stores, restaurants, and movie theaters moved into the Texas suburbs. For many, suburban life was the realization of the American dream. However, life was often less pleasant for those behind in Texas cities. Typically, only people with good jobs could afford the move to the suburbs. This left the poorer people living in their inner cities. Due to housing discrimination, many minorities also were trapped in cities. Because the urban poor paid little in taxes, cities began to suffer. Fewer trained police officers could be kept on the payroll, and the city crime rates soared. Neighborhood fire departments struggled to pay for enough firefighters and equipment to handle emergencies. Trash collection and sewer services were unable to meet the needs. Polluted water and air in cities and industrialized areas became a health threat to many. Because of the overcrowding, lack of funding, and other problems, Texas schools were ranked among the lowest in the nation after World War II. In an effort to improve the quality of education, a 12th grade was added, and classes were expanded to include fine arts and job training. In 1949, the Texas legislature passed the Gilmer-Aiken bills. These bills were improved teacher training, raised teacher salaries, provided textbooks for all students, and required students to attend school for 9 months each year. The bills also set up the Texas Education Agency, which we've talked about in previous units, TEA, to set and review standards for Texas teachers in public schools. After fighting bravely for their country in World War II, minority veterans had also hoped they would return to a different America, one in which all citizens were treated equally. They soon discovered that little had changed. Minority Texans still faced restricted opportunities and unfair treatment in work, education, housing, and healthcare. Due to threats and violence, many were afraid to vote. Many minority Texans were unable to make their voices heard because they could not vote. In 1904, the state had passed a law that required voters to pay a poll tax in order to vote. Because many Hispanics and African Americans were poor, few could register to vote. Many were also threatened with violence to keep them from voting. Hispanic Hector P. Garcia was one of the most vocal leaders in Texas. In 1948, he founded American GI Forum. This organization helped minority veterans obtain the same benefits other veterans received, including health care, housing, and education. In 1948, the GI Forum and the League of United Latin American Citizens won a federal court case barring segregation of Hispanic children in the schools. African Americans also organized to end inequality in Texas. Following the lead of national figures such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., African Americans demanded an end to segregation. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People became a powerful voice for all minorities. Texan James Farmer, Jr., made great strides for civil rights on a national level as well as at home. In 1942, he founded the Congress of Racial Equality. He then went on to lead peaceful protests throughout the South in the 1960s.